All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are here in the Brandt booth at the Commodity Classic in New Orleans, Louisiana. I am sitting with a very special guest, Mr. David Hula, the corn yield world record champion. So we're going to chat with him today, pick his brain, figure out what he's got going on this year, and I'm excited for it. David, thank you very much for joining me.
Yeah, man, this is a good time. Great show we got going on here.
So to kick things off, you are the corn yield world record champion. You've become a well-known farmer in recent years, but you weren't always the corn king, and I don't know if I know how you got your start in farming. So
Yeah, well, I'm the third generation here at Charles City, Virginia. I got a chance to farm with my late granddad and now my late dad. We buried my dad New Year's Eve last year. So I got a chance to work with them, and they were always innovators. And, you know, my granddad was one of the first ones to break 100 bushels back in the day, and then my dad was like 200 bushels, and then we went from there to where we are today. And, you know, so had a chance to work with them. That's the best thing right there, family farms.
So family farm, I mean, that's an awesome way to get started, to learn from your father like that. So once you took over the operation and started making the decisions, when did you kind of realize you got the potential to compete in contests and really make things happen?
Sure. Well, back in '85, we put in our first irrigation, and my dad was, you know, he was still living. And here I'm wanting to try some new things, and then I talked to my dad and granddad about it, and they're like, well, we tried that a long time ago. It's like, really, it didn't work. So, you know, now we're trying to reduplicate some of the things that they had done. But in '85, we had a high yield of 186 bushels. Won a state contest that particular year. And, you know, we after that saw that, hey, we got potential, and then we just started playing with it and trying a few things. And then when we won, we got to, you know, come out to the Commodity Classic.
Yeah.
And then we got to meet all these growers around here. And then once we did that, you know, we're getting different questions, and I'm asking them things, seeing all the exhibitors we got.
Yeah.
Not only the foo juice, but the fertilizer industry and, you know, specialty products like Brandt has, and then the equipment. And then once we've done that, just started implementing it.
Yeah. So 85, you said your yield was 186?
Yeah.
So, and what was your world record?
616. So we got, you know, we've come a long way in a short time.
Yeah, that's quite the progress.
Yeah.
So that's when you started competing, but when did you kind of take the next step and say, all right, I've got a chance to become the best that there's ever been?
Well, when you think about that, I don't know that I ever thought that we had a chance to be the best we could ever be, but I know when I met Francis Childs the first time, and we actually started talking. You know, he explained things to me like, hey, Dave, you don't need to think about this. Start thinking about this. And, you know, that just kind of opened up my mind. And then as we started becoming, you know, not only state champions, then when we moved to the next level, you know, that was like, oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
And then duplicating it.
Gotcha. I mean, that's awesome. So you obviously compete now. It's part of who you are to grow these giant yields. But I'm curious to know how early into the growing season can you look at your field or your crops and say, all right, this field, this crop has a chance to do something special?
Probably earlier than what most people think, Alex. When the crop comes up, that's when we know we got a chance to do something. And then after that, then we're just trying to match that with the weather and then our management. But when we see it come out of the ground, if it comes out uniform, we know game is on.
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome. That early on, you know you're onto something special. So I've seen you walking around the show here. I've noticed that you like to hide your name badge, and I'm sure that's because you get asked all the time, you know, the simple question of how do you do it? But the answer can't be that simple, or else everybody would be having yields like you have. So I want to know, whenever people do ask you, Mr. Hula, how do you get such big yields? What's your answer and what's your advice?
Well, I know first and foremost they want to go to one of these booths and find out what's in that 2.5 gallon jug, put it in their sprayer inductor, and then make another 50, 70, 100 bushels. Well, the first thing is just got to pay attention to the details, and I always focus on the planter first. You know, get that right, and then outside of that, you got to have the right hybrid planter. So it's nothing really special. It's just making sure you check all the boxes.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's not about setting a world record. It's about making the most bushels you can on your operation. Yeah. So ROI, that's key.
Yeah, and I know you talk about being a student of the crop, and so that's got to be part of how you get such high yields. So can you give me an explanation of what your definition of student of the crop is?
Sure. Well, I mean, you know, I got a son and a daughter. Both of them are different. each hybrid's a little bit different than the other. They all take sunlight, they all take water, take fertilizer, but how one might grow different than the other. We had our best success with 1197, and I understand what makes that hybrid tick. So when you're being student of crop, it's like, when is it going to start requiring the most nutrients? When do you need to make sure you got the right amount of water? And then, good Lord gives us different types of weather. So when do we realize, hey, it doesn't have that potential, let's stop spending dollars?
You mentioned 2.5 gallon jugs, so I do want to ask you about your micronutrient practices. Brandt is a micronutrient company, so I got to ask. When did you start kind of paying close attention to micros? You started competing in 85. I mean, were you looking at micros back then?
Yeah, no, not nearly. I mean, we had a traditional zinc and boron, and, I don't consider sulfur a micronutrient, which is not, but, those were the two big ones. And then back in the mid-90s late 90s, we started looking at micronutrient packages, and then we started putting micronutrients, like ends up zinc into furrow. This is like a great deal. And then, now Brandt's got the product called Level Up, and y'all had the Smart B, the Trio, and all those. We just started playing with those over time. But the key is you got to pull tissue samples, know where you are and what do you need.
Do you treat your micronutrients kind of the same way that you treat your macros? Like, are you looking at your boron levels the same way you're looking at your nitrogen?
Yeah. Well, we realize it's all about balance. And, like when you got your kids, they want sugar. And so but first you can't just give them sugar. You got to give them some meat and potatoes. And then just for the corn plants, got to have the macros, but then you don't want to let anything get out of balance. So we spend a lot of time with micros from the time it's planted all the way throughout the growing season.
That's awesome. So I've been hearing your name through our office walls for a couple years now. I think this is the first time I've ever sat down and got the chance to talk to you. But I don't know if I know how you got started with Brandt, how you came across them, and how it became part of your operation.
Yeah, well, it's all about relationships. So there's a Glenn Roundtree with used to be with Pioneer Seed. Now he jumped ship. Now he's with one of those other seed companies, got the wing on the ear or something. So we won't name that name. Yeah. But then he's got a younger brother, Jeremy. So got to know Glenn, and then having been introduced to Jeremy, and then kind of that relationship became cultivated then, and that's what it all takes. And then, depending on your fertilizer provider, we deal a lot with Nutrient. So, and Nutrient has a great relationship with Brandt as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep, Jeremy is he's one of my favorite sales reps. He's a good guy to hang out with. He does his field day every summer, which I've seen you at, and it's a really good time. So I want to ask you, you're always talking about you got to ask the right questions. That's right. Part of the process of growing such high yields. Well, my question for you is, and you mentioned a couple of our products earlier, but can you dive into how our products really do fit as a part of your fertilizer program?
Well, I know I'm sitting here in a Brandt booth, so of course, we use a lot of their products, have success. We understand the value of zinc, and then the way Brandt formulates the zinc, and then their enzymes that they're putting in there just to help make the availability of the nutrient better and how the plant can pick it up. And then when we start looking at the foliar application products, just the ratios and the combinations what they have and whatever foliar amendments that are incorporated in that. And then when we start looking at boron and then moly, and then they just created this product called Level Up that's got micronutrients. It's got some other attributing factors or components inside that just allow the crop to be influenced. So it's those type things that allow me. And then the most important thing, it's a good, safe product, and then also it's something that I'm not going to have compatibility problems. So when we're dealing with aircraft, helicopters, airplanes, you can't afford anything to not mix. And we have had great success with that.
You mentioned Ends Up earlier, but I want to know if there's one of the Brandt products that sticks out above the rest where you're like, all right, no matter what, this product has to be a part of my program. Is there one that comes to mind?
Yeah, well, the Smart B, the BMO, I am a sole believer on that. And then now they got the Smart K products, any of those, we know the value of those, but BMO is one that's, it's going to go on corn and or soybeans.
Yeah, that boron product is super unique. I'm always fascinated by the compatibility of it. I keep asking Brian Hashmar, who is in charge of our research and development, is there anything that it doesn't mix with? And I don't know if I've gotten an answer yet, because I've seen it mix with everything. So I want to move on, like fertilizer prices, inputs in general. It's kind of all everybody talks about now. The prices are up. So what advice do you have for farmers that are trying to save their way to prosperity?
Yeah, well, I mean, you don't want to plant a crop and then not feed it. So then you know what you're going to get. So the one thing that, we are an area operation, any of this marginal type ground, let's be really wise. Maybe not put that in corn, go back in soy on that. But in your traditional ground, irrigated, good soil, and don't plant the crop and then not giving any attention to it.
Yeah.
Because a farmer will not ever drop something he knows pays.
Yeah.
Now, the biggest thing is a lot of times growers will make an application with a product. They never have a check beside it, so they don't know if it worked or didn't work. They just had their relationship for their salesman. He said, yeah, I'll just give it a try.
Mm-hmm.
And so if growers truly know that something's going to pay, it's going to pay when prices are high or not prices are low.
Yeah.
So I would not give any of those up.
I was talking to some of my farmer friends, told them I was going to have the chance to talk to you, and I told them what your yield was, in the 600s, and they're like, well, there's no way he makes money on that. So, I mean, you're looking at ROI, obviously.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Especially with the input prices now.
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, it just feels like you're making such an investment in your field and in your seed that the ROI has to be there, and you have to have these big yields. So I guess my question is, I mean, how do you draw that line on, like, okay, I'm going to do this, and how do you make sure you're going to get your ROI on it?
Right. Well, I mean, how much money does a grower actually think you could spend on a crop?
Yeah.
I mean, it could be insane, but we've spent well less than $2,000 an acre on that 600 bushel corn.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's not including land rent because everybody's land rent's a little different. But when you start thinking about, if you were having 400 bushel corn at $6, that's $2,400 bucks.
Mm-hmm.
And you go 500, that's $3,000. So we're not nowhere spending what the cost of that production is. And the things that you do is you're learning from those. And then whatever we learn out of that area, we're learning to implement that in our regular farm ground.
Yeah. So over the past few years, you're not just a farmer anymore. You're a TV personality. You're more or less a celebrity. And now you're leading your Farmers to Farmers program that you've been doing and that we've been a part of over the past couple of years, called Total Acre. So can you tell me a little bit about what Total Acre is and what you've been running around doing?
Well, first and foremost, it used to be called Next Level.
Mm-hmm.
We have this TV show called Next Level Farming with RFD, but Randy Dowdy and myself created a collaborative effort, and we started with is Next Level, and now we've changed it to Total Acre. Part of it because we realized after we were doing it, we found out that somebody had the rights to the name Next Level.
Yeah.
Like, go figure, who would have thought?
Right.
And they were not taking advantage of it, they were able to reap some of the benefits of that, exposure. So then we were trying to come up with names, and then the Total Acre name come up, and then so of course we had to do our due diligence. Does anybody own Total Acre? Come to find out, Brandt owns Total Acre.
Yep.
So then we went to Brandt and said, hey, is there a chance that we could buy the rights to that? And great relationship, so we were able to capture that.
Yeah. So the Total Acre program, I mean, it's gotten a lot bigger over the past couple of years. So can you run me through one of the what happens at one of the camps and what you guys do?
Well, we got camps across the country, and what a grower gets to do, he's getting an opportunity to work with both Randy and or myself 4 times a year. And in that, we just came off a planter clinic in Maricopa, Arizona. It was a great opportunity because I said the best thing, the way in which I knew we had high yield corn is when the corn came up.
Yeah.
So you got to get your planter dialed in. So we had the planter clinic, so that was one meeting. And then we visit in these camps in the summertime. So we'll go out there and spend 2 days and walk fields with growers, earlier in the summer when we can influence a crop, and then later in the summer when we can still influence a crop. This past year we were working when they were actually harvesting corn. So some growers do a good job harvesting corn, some don't do so good.
Yeah.
And then we meet in the early winter, just time to where a grower we can assess what they did and then how to best use their dollars before the end of the season, end of the year. And then the other thing is we got a software package where growers can communicate with other growers, see their tissue level, see what's going on. And, a great thing about that is if a grower in South Carolina starts planting corn a month before a guy in Illinois, and he's trying something new that works, the guy in Illinois gets to learn from that, and then he's got a head start. So when he finds out what Brandt products really moving the needle, then the guy in Illinois gets to take advantage of that.
I mean, yeah, it's awesome. It seems like it's going really, really well, and it sounds like you're the teacher and they're the students, but I have to imagine as you travel around, you're learning a lot as well. So can you pinpoint a couple things that you have picked up by running these camps?
Yeah, well, first of all, some of the Brandt products, that would be some that I've learned, but then some of the, things that how we can set our planter a little differently, and then some of the management schemes. Growers are always trying new things. That's one thing about growers. They're independent, but yet they're willing to try and step outside their box sometimes.
That's awesome that you're able to gain from this as well. So what do you think about this year's Commodity Classic? I've seen you walking around. I mean, is there anything specific you look for when you come to these kind of shows, or is there anything that you've seen here that's caught your eye?
Well, first, I'm just like a farmer, so I like to kick tires, see green paint. You notice I didn't say red paint. I like to see green paint. Yeah. So get to look at some of the equipment, and then we get to see what's new in the technology arena, whether it's biologicals or nutritional. And then you get into crop protection. So I'm just like everybody else. And then now you see all the buzzwords, whether they're talking about carbon credits or something else. So, yeah.
Last year, I don't think there was the Commodity Classic in person, so it's good to be back and get back on track with learning like that. So I want to start wrapping things up here. I know you got to go at noon, but until then, you're going to be hanging around our booth.
Sure.
So if there is anybody that does have questions, Mr. Hula is going to be hanging around where you can chat with him. But I want to wrap things up by asking you, what can we expect from your farm this coming year?
Well, we just want to survive like everybody else. I think that's the biggest thing. And, I think I got a son that's real excited about things, and we might be trying to do something with some soybeans this year.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Going to dabble in that world a little bit?
Yeah, that'll be a little different.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you hanging out with me and chatting. I learned a lot, that's for sure. Once again, he's going to be hanging out in the booth, so if you got questions, but thank you very much.
All right, man.
Appreciate
Thanks. Thanks to Brandt and all that. Great.
Thank you.